You know, we put so much trust in medicine to heal us. But what happens when that desperate search for a miracle cure leads not to salvation, but is something, well, something much, much darker? We're about to explore a gallery of medicine's most shocking and deadly so-called marvels.
Okay, take a look at this. Believe it or not, what you're seeing isn't some medieval torture scene. It's medicine. For almost 300 years, this was the cutting-edge treatment for syphilis. And the scariest part? Doctors believed it was working because the patient was suffering so violently, not in spite of it.
And that really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today. It begs the question, right? What if the cure itself was the real killer? We're about to dive into a time when doctors, armed with what they called science, unleashed treatments that were often way more monstrous than the sicknesses they were trying to fight. So how on earth could this happen? To get it, you really have to understand the mindset of the time. We're talking about an era where a visible, violent reaction wasn't seen as a bad side effect. Nope. It was seen as proof that the cure was actually working. This whole philosophy had a name: heroic medicine. The core idea was pretty simple and pretty brutal. They believed disease was just this imbalance in the body, and the only way to fix it was with a full-scale assault. The more the patient suffered, drooling, sweating, you name it, the more convinced the doctors were that the sickness was being kicked out of the body for good. And our first stop on this tour is the absolute poster child for heroic cures, using mercury, a powerful neurotoxin, to treat syphilis. For centuries, there was this grim saying that went around: a night with Venus, a lifetime with Mercury. So let me tell you about a guy named Elias Hawthorne. Back in 1847, he walked into a hospital just hoping to get some relief from syphilis, but instead of relief, he got strapped down, smothered in blankets, and literally rubbed down with a mercury ointment. What happened next wasn't a cure. It was a total nightmare. And this is the part that's truly chilling. It's the doctor's reaction. As Elias was writhing in agony, producing just torrents of saliva, the doctor didn't see a man being poisoned. He saw success. He actually wrote down excellent tylism. That's the medical term for all that drooling. To him, the heroic dose was working perfectly. And that was the goal: 3 pints. Doctors were actively trying to make their patients produce up to 3 pints of saliva every single day. This wasn't a side effect, you guys. This was considered the gold standard of healing. Just try to wrap your head around that volume for a second. The human cost was just horrific. People's teeth fell out, their gums rotted away, their hands would shake uncontrollably from mercury poisoning. So the big takeaway here is that for thousands of people like Elias, the real enemy wasn't the syphilis. It was the doctor standing over them with the cure. Okay, so from poisoning the body, let's see how this kind of thinking evolved to, well, surgically altering the mind. In the 1940s, a new miracle promised to cure mental illness with a simple 10-minute procedure: the lobotomy. I want you to meet 9-year-old Billy. His parents were at their wits' end. Their son was deeply troubled. And back then, the only other option was a lifetime locked away in a state asylum. And then along comes this doctor, Walter Freeman, promising them a quick, cheap, and permanent fix. Now this slide right here, it shows you exactly how a cautious experimental surgery just went completely off the rails. See, the original procedure was serious neurosurgery, but then Dr. Walter Freeman, a neurologist with 0 surgical training, by the way, he turned it into this assembly line routine he could do in his office with a tool he basically modeled on an ice pick. And here's how it worked. It was terrifyingly simple. First, an electric shock to knock the patient out. Then, Freeman would take his ice pick. He called it an orbital clast. Slide it up under the eyelid, give it a little tap with a mallet to get through the thin bone there, and then just swish it back and forth. That's it, severing the connections in the brain's frontal lobe. And sure, the storm inside the patient's head was quieted, but the cost was absolutely devastating. The cure for agitation was the total erasure of the self. Patients like little Billy Thompson were left docile, yeah, but also completely emotionally hollow. Their personalities were just gone, forever. All right, let's switch gears. We're going from the asylum to the beauty counter. Our next story shows how the public's love affair with new science managed to turn a deadly element into the ultimate luxury cosmetic. This is the story of radium. So picture it. The early 20th century. Radium was being marketed as this magical liquid sunshine. For socialites like a Vivian Langford, it was the secret ingredient in a fancy face cream called Thoradia.
And the promise? A permanent, youthful glow, coming straight from the atom itself.
And oh, it wasn't just face cream. Not even close. The public went absolutely nuts for this stuff. Radium was put into everything. I'm talking chocolate, water tonics, even toothpaste. People genuinely believed they were consuming pure vitality, this perpetual sunshine that would cure anything and everything.
But the first hints of the horror story to come started showing up in the factories. The radium girls. These were young women who painted watch dials with glowing radium paint, and to get a fine point on their brushes, they were told to lick them. They were literally swallowing poison day in and day out, and their jaws began to physically rot away.
The public didn't really wake up, though, until a millionaire named Eben Byers died a horrific death. He was a huge fan of a radium tonic called Radithor. When he died, his jaw had practically disintegrated. His bones had just crumbled. The miracle cure had eaten him alive from the inside out.
So what can we learn from all this? From mercury and ice picks and radioactive makeup? Well, when you look at them together, some really clear patterns start to pop out. These are the echoes of medical tragedies that, honestly, we can still hear today.
In every single one of these cases, you find the exact same toxic mix of ingredients. You have a public that is desperate for a cure. You have blind trust in so-called experts. You have a total lack of any real regulation. And you have that seductive, powerful promise of a quick, scientific fix. That, right there, is the perfect recipe for a medical disaster.
And that leads us to one final, pretty uncomfortable thought. I mean, it's easy for us to look back at all this and feel so superior, right? But it forces us to ask a really critical question. What treatments that we think are revolutionary today will future generations look back on with that exact same shock and disbelief?